Why should Arsenal's performance against Crystal Palace last night be described as near perfection? Welcome back to the Harvey Gratian YouTube channel. I'm so glad you have found us. And in today's video, I'm going to tactically break down Arsenal's 1-0 away win against Crystal Palace last night. How are Arsenal different to their victory over Nottingham Forest on the opening weekend of the Premier League? It was a tactically fascinating game, but one combined with dogged depictions of defending the box. So let's get into things. I'm going to start with my initial thoughts pre-match and where this game was going to hinge on. Where was it going to be won or lost? Well, Zinchenko's absence for Mikel Arteta opted for him to make that choice of Tomiyasu for the injured Timber in that conservative left centre-back role. Arteta also opted for a 3-2-5 with Rice in the six, with Partey inverting from right back into midfield alongside him, not sort of the 3-1-6 in settled play we saw against Nottingham Forest. Why was this the right choice? Well, Palace defend in a settled and compact 4-4-2 block under Roy Hodgson, meaning that even with the 3-2-5, you still have overloads in each phase and you don't sacrifice the number of defenders in transition against often Palace's front four. Because against Forest, that 3-1-6 was the right choice, especially at home, and Forest only attack with a front three. Against Palace, and especially away, in an awkward ground, this would be simply too attacking. This is what happened to Chelsea and Pochettino against West Ham, incidentally. Individually, Arsenal still had the upper hand as well. So with this tactical, numerical superiority, it looked like Arsenal had the chance to control things. But there was one key area that could hamper this, and what the whole game may just depend on. Without the elite, natural inverted fullbacks for Arsenal, whether that's Zinchenko or Timber, Crystal Palace would look to spring onto anything played in between the lines and play on that lack of natural press resistance and sort of technical individual errors for Arsenal that would allow the game to become chaotic and give Roy Hodgson's team a platform to disrupt. And this relates to Palace's own individual quality in the duels, which Roy Hodgson allows to shine in his 4-4-2 block. Eze as part of the front two with Oleksandr Zinchenko, Ayew wide right. It's much less porous than Patrick Vieira's Crystal Palace team, but ultimately Hodgson has never been known for being an aggressive pressing manager. He's a very good space and gap closer. And if Arsenal controlled the game early, they would control the match. And this is what's happened. But when you don't cash in on what was a near perfect first half performance, as I'm going to get onto now, in the Premier League, you take big risks. But I want to talk about first how we controlled things up until Tomiyasu's red card in what was almost perfection, bar some fine criticisms in the final actions. Arsenal's 3-2-5 in settled play at times became a 4-1, with Partey staying as that right back and Rice becoming that single pivot or lone six. And it was Odegaard in the number 8 to drop deeper. That's a staple of Arsenal's unpredictability, which number 8 or which interior drops deeper that I've played on across the whole of pre-season. It was Odegaard on the right-hand side, not typically the left-hand side, with Havertz playing as that left-hand-sided shadow striker or raumdeuter role. Again, another position I've identified and analysed with Havertz in very, very close perspective and inspection. And I think this was a statement of confidence from Mikel Arteta doing this at such a potentially tricky ground. There was security across the pitch in all actions for Arsenal. And this allowed the possession to be completely dominated in that first half with 65% of the ball. Rice not only mopped up fires well, but he had that perfect balance between progressing the ball and retaining it. And this pass selection is arguably the best part of his game and was a large reason why he was bought. You see the effortless switches, but always that undercurrent of reliability for Declan Rice. And I think he's also continuing to mature in his own movements on the pitch. This was a key topic we've discussed on the channel throughout pre-season. Combine that with his central presence, I think that burst to set up Nketiah for his chipped opportunity epitomised that perfectly. There was no risk at all. He made the space his own, and that was another sign of his growing in a way, JDP coaching and maturity in this Arsenal side. And for Rice, and for this whole Arsenal side, it's that mix of on-the-ball quality and that physical platform that makes these uber physical, or in other games, very technical games, able for someone like Declan Rice to dominate them. And this security as well always made sure that Arsenal had the key zones and channels always occupied with that front five of theirs, and partner this with our own physical monsters. This is what you need now. If you have that athleticism to match these disruptive sides like Crystal Palace can be, you allow your technical superiority to gain you the edge. And this is why purely physical sides have a much lower ceiling than the Arsenals and Manchester Cities around. This relates to winning your duels and moments, these key moments. Saliba's tackle on Ayew, Eddie constantly occupying Anderson and Gurhi, both the centre-backs. Saka with the most fouls and possession won across the pitch. And this helps, of course, matching Palace in the transition. And Arsenal essentially did as well as they could versus another, like Forest, compact side with, I'd say, more cutting edge going forward. But it was only near perfection. There was obviously only one goal scored. So I want to look at why that is now. I'm going to start with talking about the left-hand side dynamics. Again, as we did last week against Nottingham Forest, there's a really nice dynamic when Kai Havertz drifts wide, exploiting the pockets of space like the raumdeuter would when Gabriel Martinelli drifts from wide into central areas. Havertz also made those late runs attacking the box from deep off the shoulder of defenders, which is the only way you're really going to win headers against Gurhi and Anderson. But something was still lacking in this left-hand sided play. And again, it was that incision. There was some lovely intricate play between Kai Havertz, Gabriel Martinelli and Takehiro Tomiyasu. But it still lacked incision, especially when Tomiyasu was in those advanced areas from the left centre-back role. He was very confident on the ball, I thought, yesterday, but still, he doesn't lack confidence, he just lacks that natural incision, and I think that made us hold off at times, playing that final action in the final third on the left-hand side. Of course, Oleksandr Zinchenko solves that. He's literally the best around at finding pockets of space and playing passes through a low block. But of course, that's the trade-off, Zinchenko against Tomiyasu, in terms of physicality. And that's what Timber puts into one. And a video on his injury and what that could mean for Arsenal, and their title charge even, is coming up on the channel, so stay tuned. And this is not something in its entirety that Kivior, Gabriel or Tierney fixes. But let's talk a bit more about Kai Havertz. Of course, when the raumdeuter isn't getting any output, they are criticised. They're not the type of player to take control and dictate the build-up, create at will. They're not the constant focal point or goal-scoring presence in the number 9. So if they don't score or assist, you're asking yourselves after these types of game, what did they actually do, and criticising them. So all I ask for Havertz, as I have done, is patience. I also know with a less positionally disciplined 9 in Jesus instead of Nketiah, you'll see more of him in central areas and more out of him. But output is the main goal for the raumdeuter, and I think we just have to be a bit patient with Kai Havertz. But I also want to touch on Arsenal's right-hand side. Palace were really compact, so I think it was always going to be difficult for Arsenal, certainly away, to isolate their wingers against Mitchell and Ward. But while the left-hand side had that intent without the incisiveness, I think it was the opposite for the right-hand side. I think Rice's and Arsenal's domination, literally complete domination in that first and second phase of play when on the ball, should allow, in that 4-1 build-up, Partey in that right-back role to support Saka, often on the overlap. He's not a natural overlapper like someone like a Jurrien Timber, though, who's used to joining the attack as a sixth man. And these are the fine margins. But it was the fine margins in what was a really good first half, despite it being 0-0. Obviously, then in the second half, early on, we did get the goal. I saw that, and probably loads of us saw that Nketiah run a mile off. It's been a staple of pre-season, that quick free kick. And look, you know I'm a massive fan of Nketiah. Followers of the channel absolutely know this. I love how relentlessly he offers himself in between the lines or in behind. The way he finds space behind such a low block is tremendous. He's an unbelievable outlet, a sort of compact thoroughbred up there at top. And he's got very underrated close control and technical security. I know the chances missed may even steal the show. And I cannot totally sway you if that's sort of the main takeaway. I'm not going to blame you at all if that's the main takeaway from your Nketiah performance. But just, I think, from my point of view, ask yourself whether we would have even won that game without Eddie in the side yesterday. And look, I think it would have been an all-timer performance in terms of his own Arsenal games if he had managed to score. But that's for another day. And obviously when you don't score, when Arsenal as a team don't score, with the threats in every single Premier League side, you leave yourself at risk. And what's more, this comes against an evolving Roy Hodgson Crystal Palace side, even as a manager at 76. See, that 4-2-3-1 in possession shape that Hodgson and Palace uses has sort of the press resistance and retention-based double pivot in Doucouré and Lerma, able to go a 4-1 build-up at times, with Lerma dropping into the back four, allowing Mitchell to promote as that left-back into the final phase of play. And this is sort of when they break through Arsenal's man-to-man 4-4-2 press and go into that more settled 4-4-2 block. Eze is given the freedom in that number 10, and it's things like this that have meant, since Roy Hodgson has taken charge, Palace have averaged 15.7 shots per game. I mean, you can also tell why Roy Hodgson, on a side note, likes Jordan Ayew on the right wing. That extra technical security and defensive work rate in the press. Also, his striker instincts allow him to create separation really well on that right-hand side. So you can tell why he likes him there. But now I want to move on. We talked about why Arsenal, how Arsenal dominated, why it was an impressive performance. But let's talk about the Tomiyasu red card and what happened after that. I think I sympathise a bit more with David Coope, because when you do watch it in real time, it does look like there may have been a slight pull. Obviously, there was clearly not, and it was a very harsh red card. But that's not the point of the video. So, when Tomiyasu was sent off, we changed to our 5-3-1 with Saka at left back, Nketiah that out ball, which did become Havertz in the centre forward later. Of course, Kai Havertz isn't as compact and able to get a team up the pitch on the ball as much as Eddie, but he can occupy defenders aerially. And then Gabriel Magalhaes came on at centre-back as well, and he's the most suited defender in the squad to defending the box aerially from deep. And he, on a side note, Gabriel will definitely be staying, by the way. You saw him, like he did in pre-season, wear the captain's armband at the end. Gabriel will stay at Arsenal, I'm very confident on that. And these situations, they're never nice. I didn't enjoy it last night, but the physicality of this Arsenal team is built for this now. Let's never doubt their ability to dig in. But what did Roy Hodgson do to try and break us down? It was a free-form build-up ahead of the double axis of Guéhi and Anderson at the back. But this wasn't optimal. Why? Well, they didn't overload the last line of play in the midfield enough, or take advantage of the possible 2v1s out wide. Eze often came deep, which is absolutely fine, but Lerma then didn't roam higher in between the lines to replace him. This often meant that Lerma, Eze and Doucouré were all playing with the Arsenal block in front of them. And Eze, of course, is best in between the lines. I think he's Foden-esque in terms of how good he is on the turn. I think in the whole game, the one clear chance for Palace I can remember was Oleksandr Zinchenko, that header that White maybe just did enough to put him off. By the end of the game, Arsenal were actually setting up in a 5-4. But you just see, with the substitutions of Kivior, Jurrien, Zinchenko, passing distances all of a sudden seem to become smaller with these types of guys, with Rice as well operating in a similar zone. And Hodgson is never known for his presses. They always err on the sides of passiveness, and I think that really helped Arsenal manage and in the end get through the game just about. And the away day clean sheets for Arsenal do continue. It's a shame about the red card because the next step for Arsenal is controlling a game for 90 minutes, and we weren't able to see that as the start to the second half maybe implied it would. But it's great also, Zinchenko is back. We will need him. plus potentially more, but that's for another video. Thank you very, very much for watching. I've enjoyed making this video. I really hope you've enjoyed watching it. I only ask you to like, comment, subscribe and share right at the end of the video, because hopefully you found it entertaining in whatever shape or form that entertainment reaches you. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one, and a video on how Jurrien Timber's injury may affect Arsenal. See you in a bit.